Jericho.
How are you?
Man, I'll tell you what. That was quite an intro. Can you just play that everywhere I go? Like if I go into McDonald's for some fries, you just play that on a screen? That was awesome. I never knew I was that good.
Well, you were okay. You had a bit of run.
Right.
You beat The Rock and Stone Cold in the same night.
Yeah, that was cool. It was like winning an Oscar, you know, in the world of wrestling, toiling for many years. It took me 9 years to get into the WWE, which was my dream when I was just a young kid. And then actually get to win the championship after beating both those guys in the same night was like winning a Best Actor award. So it was very cool, very gratifying.
We showed it on top there because everybody is who they came from in some way or form. Over there, it's your old man in a Rangers jersey. Yeah. Your dad had a hockey card, man.
He did. He had a whole bunch of hockey cards, which is cool. And actually, that picture right above it was from Madison Square Garden in the dressing room.
Well, this season, your dad scored 20 goals that year, right?
Yeah, he scored 20 goals that year and got 20 assists. So he was like the original power forward because he would beat some ass, too. When guys used to come into the league, they would try and take it out on him first to prove their toughness. I remember Dave Schultz, the first time, he said, I'm going to make a name for myself in this league, Irvin. I'm going to start with you. Nice. So he was like the guy that they went to try and get into some fights.
So how does that affect you when you were a kid? I mean, when you know all these stories, because I imagine your dad was away for a while and then here and there, but...
Yeah. You know, it's one of those, like, kids would be like, oh, your dad's Ted Irvin, he's you know, he's a hockey player, and for me, it was just my dad. Yeah. You know, he still smelled in the morning like anyone else's dad, you know, and so it was interesting, though, because I remember sitting in Madison Square Garden when I was about 3 or 4 years old, and watching my dad, like, down the ice on a 2-on-1, going, Dad! Dad! And then he wouldn't look up and wave at me. I get so, Dad, why don't you look at me? And I would put my jacket over top of my head like this, have a little tantrum. So it was very cool years later when I finally got to go to the Garden and wrestle there and do some main event matches there. And my dad was actually there.
Was he like, Chris?
Yeah, Chris! I just ignored the SOB. I was like, I'm looking at
it. So much is made of your wrestling career, and we'll talk about it, but I'm actually very interested in the post-wrestling career for the last couple of years. Because it's very difficult for an athlete or an entertainer to do something and then to not do what they're known for. And you've kept busy, but you still moved away from the limelight.
Yeah, I was really burned out on wrestling after 15 years. I left in 2005, decided to take a break, just mentally fried. And I was really lucky in that I had always kind of branched myself out. I had a lot of things that I wanted to do, and I never put limits on myself for what I could and couldn't do. I found out early on that the only people that tell you can't do something are the ones that have failed, the negative people. And I always kind of just ignored that. You're too small to be a wrestler. I was like, well, I humbly disagree. Same thing when I left the business. I have a band, Fozzy, and we ended up touring the world. We did really good in the UK. I acted in a couple movies. I had a radio show. I did this book, which was very much of an eye-opener for me. It took about 18 months to write that bad boy. So, I mean, there was a lot of things that I could do. So I never just wanted to be the wrestler because I'm an entertainer. I'm in show business. Wrestling is part of a show business. And I always looked at it that way. I always wanted to be the David Lee Roth of wrestling, the party host. Like, come on, let's go, come on, let's do it. You know, that was always kind of what I wanted to be. And so when I finally walked away from the job, I had all these other things that I could go into and work on, which was very fortunate.
Well, but I wonder if there was fear when you thought about leaving it, because, you know, if that's where people know you most, did you have was there any hesitation where you thought, it's the unknown?
I didn't really think that way because I was just really, there was no choice for me. I was done. Mentally, I was done. And it's like anything else. If you can't give 120%, you might as well just get away, especially on this job, because you could hurt yourself, you could hurt somebody else. You know, it's like, I love pizza, but if I eat pizza every day for 3 meals a day for 2 weeks, I'm gonna get sick. I don't want to look at pizza. I don't want to smell it. Keep it away from me. Same thing for wrestling. So about a year in, when I started writing this book, which made me remind me how much I love the sport and had a passion for it, I started thinking, you know, I could go back at some point. And that's when I started thinking, like, I started getting ideas again. Oh, I could do something with this guy, or I could do something with that guy. And that's how I knew that I was ready, because things just pop in my head.
Hold on, stick around, because when we come back, we're going to talk about Chris returning to the ring. And obviously, in the book, he talks about a lot of good times and a lot of bad times, and we'll talk about his good friend, somebody we've heard a lot about, in Chris Benoit. Stick around, more with Chris Jericho when the hour returns. All right, you're back on the hour. We continue to talk to Chris Jericho, who's got this book called The Lion's Tale: Around the World in Spandex. You've worn some bad pants in your career.
I have, some real beauties. As remember, we were just talking about the old days when the first Fozzy record came out. We came to Toronto and you interviewed us on the building for The Loud, when you were just lowly George Stroumboulopoulos.
That's right, that's all I was.
That's right.
And then I got a more ethnic last name, and here we are.
See, look what happened. That was it.
That's right.
Got rid of the Stroumboulopoulos and look where you are.
That was much Loud day. That's true. That was a long time ago.
Good times, man.
Your career has, I mean, you've actually enjoyed quite a bit of success, but you spent a lot of time getting to that point, right? Now, the difficulty, and a lot of this is going to tie into what I want to ask you about Chris Benoit, and that how difficult this, a lot of people don't know that in professional wrestling, it's a hard job, because you spend a lot of time alone, there's a lot of other stuff that come with it.
Well, the first and foremost is it's such a mentally and physically grueling job. in the fact that there's only a few people, a handful of people in the world that can do it at the highest level, and millions of fans that want to see it worldwide. So it's a constant hamster wheel. You're just going and going and going. Plus, it is lonely to be, to be on the road by yourself. I mean, I spent 6 weeks in Japan. I was the only foreign guy. You know, I just traveled the subways looking for something to do. It does get to you after a while. There's a little bit of a, stir crazy and cabin fever. And also, too, I think a lot of people just think you just show up and go, I'm going to be a wrestler, and you're on TV. It took me 9 years to make it to the WWE, and 9 years of working around the world. But also, I mean, working at a kid's birthday party for a hot dog and a glass of orange juice,
You wrestled at this party for that?
Yeah. The kid I got a clown for my 7th birthday. This kid got 3 matches with ring entrances and everything. And I got paid like in condiments. But it wasn't just inside the ring too. It was outside of the ring. From getting held up at gunpoint in Mexico City at 4 a.m. by this girl that was going to take me to a party.
Sure.
And the party was me getting robbed and left on the side of the road.
It was a bad party.
Bad party. It was this sucky party, man. It was bad. This party sucks. And then getting threatened by the Japanese mafia when I smashed a vase on the ground. They're going to cut off my little pinky finger. Like, all these things were happening to me at a young age when most kids my age were still living in their parents' basement working at Timmy Hortons. So it gave me so much life experience as well as experience in the ring too.
Benoit, the Chris Benoit story played out publicly. He did not look good, obviously, when it all went out. You knew Chris very well.
Yeah, he was probably my best friend I ever had in the business. Yeah. It's one of those things that, like, when I first started, he was about 3 years older than me, and I was really enamored with him. I thought if I could follow my career just like his, it'd be really cool. Like, the first promoter I ever worked for wanted to call me Rob Benoit, wanted me to be his brother. And when I finally met Chris, the first thing I could think of, I got to think of something cool to say to Chris Benoit. And the only thing I could think of to say was, hey, my name's Chris, too. And then he was like, oh, great. So, but then we started a friendship in '92 and went through 15 years, and it was just a great guy, such a positive influence as a person and as a performer. And this book ends in 1999 when I made it to the WWE, so the stuff that happened in the last weekend of his life, really irrelevant to the story, but I still felt it was important to write a foreword just explaining what kind of relationship I had with him, just to kind of clear the air so people could enjoy the book the way it should be enjoyed.
You know, man, a lot of people, as soon as this happened, the tragedy with Benoit, they went straight and tried to blame wrestling. They blamed steroids, they blamed everything. I mean, you were right in that world.
Yeah.
Are there relations between the world and what happens outside of it?
I think absolutely there has to be relations to it, but I think to hang the entire hat on it is completely wrong. I think there were some serious, deep-seated mental issues, some physical problems. Chris loved wrestling. It was his only job. He never worked at Zeller's or worked at Shoppers Drug Mart. He was a wrestler, and for 22 years, that's what he did. So I mean, there's a lot of wear and tear there, physically, but mentally too. I think there's a lot of issues combined with everything else. I talked to a psychiatrist at length who told me that usually when these things happen, it's a dozen reasons. So, but it still doesn't explain anything for me, and it's something I'll have to live with for the rest of my life.
You're coming back, aren't you?
There's a lot of speculation. I
saw that thing, that 222 thing around February. One of the kids outside said, "Is he coming back February 22nd?"
Yeah, well, I'm a magician with many tricks and secrets, and I like people hearing the story and seeing the story as it plays out. I think people feel a sense of entitlement to go on the computer and find out everything. Yeah. That's no fun that way. I'd rather people wait and see how it unfolds, but eventually I'll be back.
Okay, just tell me and I won't tell anybody.
Okay.
What day you know? Oh, are you really?
Yeah, next year.
Really?
I just told him I was coming back on his birthday.
He didn't even know when my birthday is.
I don't know. He's like, really?
Chris is coming back on August the 16th. There you go. But you coming back, is it different coming back to the WWE as Chris Jericho, the guy who's coming back, as opposed to the guy who left? You're in a different position?
Absolutely. Like I said, I was mentally fried for about the last year and a half I was there. I just couldn't kick it into gear. I feel so much better now, and plus, you just can't teach experience. And I have so much experience from all these different places. I can paint a picture with colors from Germany and Mexico and Japan and training in Calgary and life experience and being with the band and just, like I said, being a showman, like a party host. And I think there's a big void for that. To come back and have some fun and let's have some positive spin on this sport.
Who are you going to go after? Do you have somebody that you want to go in?
It doesn't matter. I always prided myself on working with anybody, and that's one thing I always enjoyed. Like, just go out there and put on a great show and make sure that people have a good time.
It's called The Lion's Tail. We're on Around the World in Spandex. It's a book by Chris Jericho. Good to see you, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Chris Jericho, everybody. All right, coming up, we're going to run down the top TV icons of all time. Maybe a wrestler made a list. And apparently, I'm running for Prime Minister, except I didn't know. It's a tradition.